Ever find yourself scrolling through Reddit and, land on a post and you just think like, what in the world is going on here?
Hmm.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
A viral Reddit post that sparked a huge debate about modern masculinity and relationships.
It's so fascinating. You know what's so fascinating about this case is how this simple act of love,
Right.
like a wife, making these healthy, delicious meals for her husband,
Yeah.
it became this whole online battleground of like opinions and everything.
Right. The wife, let's call her charcuterie wife,
Okay.
started making these awesome charcuterie boards and brunch breads for her husband who works from home.
Yeah.
And she even shares her recipes online with a diabetes support group.
Wow.
Because, get this, her husband has type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
Seems pretty thoughtful, yeah?
You'd think so.
Right.
You would think so. But then enters the husband's friend
Oh, boy.
who drops the bomb that she's emasculating him with all this girl food.
Oh, no.
Apparently, meats and cheeses are now a threat to manhood.
What? So is this friend just, totally out of touch? Or is there something more to his, reaction?
Right.
A post got over 1,000 comments, so clearly this hit a nerve.
Over 1,000 comments and over 7,000 upvotes, so it definitely struck a chord.
Wow.
And, the vast majority of those comments were on charcuterie wife's side,
Oh, good.
calling the friend out for being, insecure and jealous.
Yeah, some of the comments were brutal.
Oh, yeah.
He probably kicks puppies, too.
Oh, my gosh.
This dude heats up his own hungry man dinners. He doesn't need no broad bread.
Wow.
It's like the internet collectively decided to roast this guy.
They did.
Yeah.
I think that reaction, though, speaks to a broader point here.
Quickly?
Many men actually crave that level of care and support from a partner.
Hmm.
And so maybe the friend is kind of projecting his own relationship struggles onto this situation.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So it's not just about the food, right?
Right.
Is this actually about those deeper anxieties some men might have about, shifting gender roles in relationships?
Yeah.
Like the traditional, breadwinner role
Mhm.
is being challenged in modern society.
For sure.
So is the friend kind of clinging to an outdated idea of what it means to be a man?
It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
And it ties into a comment that popped up a few times.
Yeah.
Some would say you are being feminine by catering to your man and are therefore doing the exact opposite of emasculating him.
Interesting.
It raises the question, is catering to your partner inherently feminine, or are we assigning gender roles to simple acts of care?
Whoa, that's deep.
Yeah.
So if a man feels threatened by this kind of love and care, does that reflect poorly on him, or does it point to these larger societal expectations that we maybe need to re-examine?
Exactly. It's a fascinating dilemma that challenges the traditional definitions of masculinity.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really does. And you know what else adds another layer to this whole situation? The Andrew Tate factor.
Ah, yes. Andrew Tate, a controversial figure known for his very strong views on masculinity.
Yep.
For those unfamiliar, he basically promotes this, alpha male image, which seems to clash with what's happening with charcuterie Weissmein.
Exactly. And the irony is, many comments pointed out that Tate would probably see the friend's behavior as
Oh, wow.
criticizing this display of care as gay or weak.
It's almost like we're witnessing a clash of two very different ideas of masculinity.
Right.
On one hand, you have this traditional, almost hyper-masculine perspective.
Yeah.
And on the other, you have this idea that true strength comes from being comfortable with vulnerability and receiving care.
It really makes you wonder whose insecurities are truly being exposed here.
Yeah.
Like the husband enjoying those snacks seems perfectly content.
Right.
It's the friend who's uncomfortable.
This whole thing really highlights those blurred lines in how we define masculinity today.
Absolutely. On one hand, it's great to see people rejecting this idea that men can't be cared for without diminishing their masculinity. But on the other hand, are we maybe reinforcing the idea that it's the woman's job to provide this kind of support?
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Would we even be having this conversation if the genders were reversed?
Right.
Imagine a husband making elaborate snacks and meals for his wife who works from home. Would anyone raise an eyebrow? Would that go viral?
Probably not. And that speaks volumes about the societal expectations we still place on men and women.
Yeah.
Even in modern relationships.
It's like we're stuck in this weird in-between stage.
Right.
We want to move beyond those old school roles, but haven't quite figured out what the new ones should look like.
It's a fascinating push and pull.
Yeah.
And this Reddit post, perfectly captures that struggle. It's
Yeah.
like a microcosm of this bigger cultural conversation about masculinity, femininity, and what it means to be a good partner in the 21st century.
Okay, let's circle back to the friend for a moment.
Okay.
What do you think is going on in his head? Do you think he truly believes that these meals are emasculating, or is it something else?
It's likely a mix of things.
Okay.
Maybe he grew up with that traditional mindset of men being the providers and women the caretakers.
Yeah.
So seeing those roles reverse challenges his deeply ingrained worldview.
But like we discussed before, there's probably also a good dose of jealousy,
Right.
and maybe even resentment mixed in.
Yeah.
Perhaps he's unhappy in his own relationship, or maybe he wishes he had that level of support and doesn't.
Exactly. It's often easier to criticize and dismiss what you desire but don't have,
Right.
rather than acknowledge your own needs.
So the food isn't the real issue,
Yeah,
right?
right.
It's more about the friend's own emotional baggage.
I think that's a safe bet, and it serves as a reminder that whenever we see these strong comparisons online,
Yeah.
especially about gender roles in relationships, we need to consider the source.
Mm.
What are their motivations? What are their biases?
Yeah.
Are they speaking from a place of personal experience, or are they just repeating something they've heard?
That's a crucial point. And not just for internet drama,
Right.
but for navigating life in general.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, just because something goes viral doesn't mean it represents everyone's view.
Right.
While this story clearly resonated with many, it's just a small snippet of a much larger conversation.
Yeah.
There are countless other perspectives out there.
That's why it's so important to keep exploring these topics.
Absolutely.
Do your own research, listen to different voices, and most importantly, form your own opinions.
Don't just accept what you see on the surface.
Right.
Dig deeper, question those assumptions, and challenge yourself to see things from multiple angles.
And if you're looking for another perspective on these kinds of topics, you should definitely check out Shauna Pelage's YouTube channel.
Absolutely. She does an amazing job of breaking down these complex issues related to relationships and personal growth.
For sure.
And you might even find her take on this very Reddit post over there.
Definitely worth a watch. Okay, back to this Reddit saga. What really struck me was how quickly this story about a couple snacks turned into this larger conversation about masculinity in general.
That's what's so interesting about viral content.
Yeah.
It often acts as a springboard into these deeper anxieties and debates that are already simmering in society.
Right. It's like this small, seemingly insignificant incident cracked open this Pandora's box of questions about how men are supposed to act in the modern world.
And I think that's why so many people connected with Charcuterie Wife's story.
Yeah.
Whether consciously or not, they saw it as a reflection of the pressures and contradictions men face today.
It's like we're told to be these strong, independent alpha males,
Right.
but also be emotionally open, vulnerable, and supportive partners.
Right.
It's a tough balancing act.
It is, and this Reddit post inadvertently put a spotlight on that tension. It
Yeah.
became this Rorschach test for people's views on masculinity.
Interesting.
Some saw a supportive wife, others saw an attack on traditional gender roles, and some even saw a chance to critique Andrew Tate and his ideology.
Wow, one story. So many different reactions.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the internet can amplify these conversations and bring these different perspectives to the surface.
And that emphasizes the need for critical thinking, right?
For sure.
When we see these viral stories, we shouldn't just accept them at face value.
Right.
We should take a step back, consider all those different viewpoints, and then form our own conclusions.
That's such an important point. And not just for internet drama,
Yeah.
but for navigating life in general.
Couldn't agree more, and I think that's a great note to wrap up on.
Okay.
We've explored everything from charcuterie boards to Andrew Tate and those evolving definitions of masculinity.
Yeah.
I hope you, the listener, found this deep dive insightful and maybe even a little thought-provoking.
I know I did. This is why we love doing this show.
Right.
Exploring these fascinating cultural moments and sparking some meaningful conversations along the way.
For sure.
And speaking of conversations, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Yes, head over to Shauna Pelage's YouTube channel. You might even find her take on this Reddit post over there.
Great.
Subscribe to her channel and let us know your perspective in the comments.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to Voices of the Soul.
Yes.
We release new episodes every week diving into a wide range of topics. We're passionate about sharing these deep dives with you, and we're always excited to hear what you think.
Absolutely.
So until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those deep dives going.
And the next time you see a viral story about relationships, remember to ask yourself whose insecurities are truly on display.
That's something to chew on.